Energy, power, fossil fuel, money, influence, Russian oil circumventing international sanctions and finding loopholes because that's how it goes. Markets are craving cheap fuel instead of expensive human values. Where is the United States in it all? Where does China and its rare earth sales limitations for Western defense companies stand in it? And what in the world it all means for Ukraine? To shed at least some light on this mayhem, today we talk with the founder and director of Ukrainian campaign group Razom We Stand, which grew out of the successful Stand with Ukraine campaign to end the global fossil fuel addiction. That obviously fills in Putin's war chest. Svitlana Romanko. Pani Romanko, hello. Thank you so very much for finding time and joining us.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here today.
Pleasure, as always. But let's just dive into it, shall we? How do you assess the policy of the second Trump administration in regards of the energy tariffs? I mean, to be more specific, will these tariffs really help deprive the Kremlin of war funding? Or, on the other hand, some say it may just increase Europe's dependence on the US.
Oh, yes, this is a big question. And tariffs are only effective, I have to say, if they come with a long-term plan for renewable energy transition. Otherwise, they risk replacing one fossil dependency, which Europe has long maintained on the cheap Russian gas from the US gas dependency. And to fully deprive of Kremlin of war funding, we need a united embargo on all Russian fossil fuels, not just shifting suppliers, by eliminating the demand altogether. And the current agreement that was made between the US and the EU, which is a cost of 750 billion of dollars in the next 3 years for purchases of US produced energy suppliers, including the LNG gas, including the other fossil gas, and including also oil, does not put the EU in the good position towards the getting rid of dependency of harmful fossil fuels in general. And it also threatens to the climate and energy plan, which is a European Green Deal as well. So I can't say that this tariff agreement can be called as much success for the EU. And EU has to steer towards renewable energy transition because that's how they can liberate themselves from dependency and from addiction on now US fossil fuels. And lastly, I wanted to highlight that authoritarian regimes, yes, they are often very rich in fossil fuels, as we can see, and we can see the US slowly shifting towards the national priority, which can be also associated with the authoritarian regimes that are only starting to take rise. So we would highly recommend, and that's what we discuss with European Commission and European authorities, to not to extend this dependency on US gas now, because all gas is bad and all gas has to go.
All gas is bad, all gas has to go. There are a lot of players on the market. So imaginary scenario. Let's take this scenario as imaginary for the moment. India and China just turn away from the West completely and simply increase purchases of Russian fossil fuel no matter what. And everything, I mean, how likely is that? Is that even possible?
Oh yeah, this is not hypothetical. It's already happening, and Russian fossil fuel economy is being propped up by the Asian markets and suppliers. We know that Asian market is huge and it's highly dependent on gas and oil. And we can see that China is rejecting any tries and any economic measures that could be even discussed from the US side. They just reject them. They say we will buy as much oil, just in different words, as we want from Russia, and we will build our economy in the way we want. They, unfortunately, they can't say that because now they are owning like 90% of rare earth minerals, and they decide for whom to supply it, for the military needs, but also for the renewable energy needs. And this is a huge danger, and that's why I'm saying that building the renewable economy is an outdated task for both the EU and the US, especially with the US high potential and Inflation Reduction Act that was a very good document with a huge investment on the way. But of course, now with the current politics, we can't expect that China and India will remain friendly countries. And we need, as we are in Ukraine as well, but also in the center of Europe, we need to build the precautionary measures. And let's be clear that expanding dependency on Russian oil and gas is a climate and security time bomb for everyone involved, including also for India and China. So they will have to comply with the overall relations and need for say no to fossil fuels, but it won't happen in the short term.
Yeah, it won't. Absolutely. I mean, this is where my next question. Do you believe that loopholes in international markets can be plugged with sanctions? Is that what we're looking for? Sanctions can stop it, and then we can turn off to bigger problems like at times of peace, and then when we decide that the green economy, change the fossil fuels to green ones, to eco-friendly system. But now, how do we fight this? India and China decisions, no, we stay by fossil fuels. What do? Strengthen the sanctions? How?
This is possible. This is possible, and this is already happening. The change is underway, but it took a very long time to get to the place where we are now with closing the loopholes on sanctions. First of all, sanctions can really work, but not with existing loopholes, and only if they are globally coordinated and enforced. So now the paramount issue is to close those loopholes that allow Russia to reprofit, re-export, and maintain the shadow fleet, including, by the way, the LNG shadow fleet, because they tried to build also the dark fleet of LNG tankers to carry out LNG to different countries and remain unnoticed, and third-party traders as well. So until those loopholes will remain uncoordinated and untapped in the way of legal enforcement, unfortunately, we won't be able to see real change. But also on optimistic note, because it sounds like all pessimistic, all bad, all is lost. No, it's not lost. It's not lost. We can see Russian economy totally collapsing, and even President Trump said in the messages that if Russian oil will be falling down in price at least by $10 US, Russian economy will fail completely. But of course not with $10 lower than oil price cap. But that's something we've been advocating for quite a long time, along with our diplomatic institutions and Ukrainian government, that the oil price cap has to remain near $20-25 US per barrel. That's almost the cost of extraction of this oil in Russia, which won't let them to get any profits. If we will be anywhere close to that on the global level with G7 countries and of course US backing the effort properly, so we could expect some significant changes, shifts. And now what the EU did with the 18 sanction package, which is going to be fully enacted by the end of this week. We just saw that they decreased the oil price cap up to $47.6 US per barrel. It's a good measure, but EU is not buying Russian oil, and we have to have in mind China and India first, designing all these global measures and closing the loopholes. But also there are some certain entities that are not yet sanctioned, as CPIC, which is a US created company which is active in Scotland as well. They are also Yamal, a gas field in the Arctic, which has not yet been sanctioned by the EU and by the US. So we have plenty opportunities of how to close the loopholes. It's just a question of political will and immediate, urgent timing and deadlines that can't wait.
I can't agree more with you, Svitlana. It is all the question of political will, or rather said, the lack or absence of a political will. Why this matter is, it's not about the price cap. It's about the people who decide to do it or not to. But that's the other theme of discussion for another 24 hours in a row. But let's talk about European Union. The Europeans loudly declare now no more Russian gas by 2027. All right. But what is the problem, or better, what are the problems, because I believe there's a whole list of them, that prevent the EU from quickly transitioning to real energy independence from Russia, say in, all right, 6 months. Is that even technically possible? And we lack what? Political will again?
Yeah, technically, it's fully possible to replace fossil gas in this short amount of months, just 6 months. But studies from the Oxford University, which is called Race to Replace, which is all about getting rid of dependency of Europe on Russian gas, and other research from Amber, from Bruegel, just really proves that in facts and numbers and data. But we face regulatory delays in Europe and also corporate lobbying and the failure of political will. You were absolutely right. And the barrier is not physics at all, because that's fully achievable in the 6 months even. It's politics. And with wartime urgency, Europe could scale up heat pumps and solar and insulation like they did with the vaccines, anti-COVID vaccines. They did it in extremely short timeline, but they just don't feel that it's the same level of danger, but they should. Of course, they should. And we try to advocate as Razom We Stand. We try to talk to every politician we have an access to in the European Union to bring this sense of urgency. Because even during the high-profile event or during EU Energy Week, the Energy Commissioner was saying, "Oh, we have to gradually reduce dependency on Russian gas." And I asked the question then: was 3 years and a few months already gradual enough for you to get rid of that dependency? There is research that proves that you can do it much sooner, but we have really see significant delays in implementation and even Repower EU, which is the main political fight that is going to be held in Brussels until the current December, when this legislation has to be fully discussed, adopted, and put in place and enforced. And we can see this Repower EU is extremely delayed on both short-term contracts and long-term contracts that with Russian gas providers, Gazprom, that have to stop. They basically provide 8 additional months for short-term contracts, and actually time by January 2028 for long-term contracts to end, which is huge amount of time. And I have one question in return to ask them: do they completely sure, and do they have enough money to help Ukraine on a military battlefield to be absolutely sure that Ukraine will withstand Russian aggression by the January 2028, when they will be able to finally say no to Russian gas? I think we have to raise this issue all the time, speaking to European capitals and people who make the decisions, because they lack the sense of the urgency of this transition. If they would love to have that, they would, of course, shorten the regulatory deadlines for the new projects on renewable energy. Now the permission can currently take 6 years, which is insane. And also investments are being enabled for the renewable energies, but they have to be firmly put in place even more sooner than the end of 2028. And choosing US gas, as we spoke at the very beginning, and diversifying gas supplies is not a good way forward. The only way forward is to cutting dependency on Russian gas as soon as we can in the next 6 months. But I can't see, honestly, EU doing that in the next 6 months. We will try to do our best to advocate for it, but you can see that we already have 18 sanction packages, and we still don't have a full gas ban in any of these packages.
I mean, you're the Jedis, you're the good guys. My sincere regard to Anna and Stephen Moore, and you're doing a great job. You're advocating, and please keep on doing that. Even though Europe still does not believe that what is actually happening, they're changing Ukrainian blood for Russian oil. That's it. That's the price per barrel. This is what is going on because I mean, it's very lucrative, isn't it? I mean, why do we have to make a decision now? Another 6 months, and we have millions or trillions of dollars, or billions at least, as an answer from our economical system. And it's great, right? And Ukrainians maybe can withstand. And if not, then, well, I'm sorry. Because it depends on political will and on the people. It is not the issue of economics or technical possibility. All could be done like that. But it is not happening. And now, China, it can do that. It can move swiftly to a decision because it's an autocracy, and China controls 90% of the world market of rare earth metals. And now, the Celestial Empire limits their export to Western military sector, while at the same time supplying Russia with whatever it needs to for drones and missiles and you name it. Is there a way for Ukraine to get into the game with its own rare earth?
Yes, Ukraine can get into the game with the rare earths because we have untapped reserves of really many of them, and we can be a democratic alternative to authoritarian resource supply chains, as you just mentioned about China. But we must also center justice and sustainability and not replicate extractive models that commonly are well associated with the rare earth minerals extraction everywhere in undemocratic African dictatorships. And also in China and in some other countries of the world where we can't say they are democratic. And we are not just looking to replace one dominant supplier with another. So the world definitely would not be keen to see another, like let's say, U.S. an authoritarian regime or other rising up just to replace China. We are striving to transform how and where these critical minerals are being sourced. It includes the access of local communities to the benefits that they produce, a full value supply chains. For example, in Ukraine, we don't just want to become a resource colony, the country where those rare earths are extracted and taken out of the country and benefit other economies. And Ukraine is basically dying, and economy is falling, and inflation is mounting. We want to create, and these minerals have to create a full value supply chains with Ukraine, from the mineral extraction, which is done sustainably in regard with the best practices, not by oligarchs, first of all, because this is to replace one dependency.
Evil one.
It's very,
Yes.
yeah, it's very easy to do it. And also, I mean, fossil fuels fund wars. Rare minerals also could if we let it be.
How do we do? I mean, okay, Ukraine and the United States are planning joint projects for the extractions of rare earth metals. All right, it is clearly way more political at the moment than economical. Is it not? At the moment, at least. All right, but what are the odds for that to actually happen in the nearest future, for Ukraine to have positive economical and political impact on both economy and politics?
Yeah, you're right. It's political now, but it can become economically transformative for Ukraine if Ukraine insists on transparency, value-add industries that will be located in Ukraine and will create local benefits and jobs and potentially green jobs, and also environmental standards, because the country has suffered a lot from the war impact on everything in the country, including environment, and this has to be taken into account, that we have to have maintained the country we can live afterwards, after the war ends. And Ukraine must not be, as I said, a resource supplier, and we need to build capacity to refine, process, and lead in clean energy innovation, and also have a domestic production of renewable energy, let's say batteries, which are highly needed now, and using our lithium reserves in the country. But 3 projects are underway, as our cabinet of ministers has informed. So we shall see how successful and how transformative and economically viable they will become for Ukraine. But I am optimistic about it, because otherwise the getting profits would be really difficult. But the last thing I wanted to mention here, it's just not about truly rare earth cooperation, because there is something embedded into these agreements with on the rare earths, but namely extraction of oil and gas, which is highly afraid in Ukraine, because we were not fighting for our independence, including from Russian energy suppliers, to get back into that dependency again.
Yes. There we go. And the last question for tonight. If the United States is to return to the drill, baby, drill policy, I mean, meaning producing as much oil as possible, would that significantly affect the global shift to renewable energy?
Yeah, of course, US is the largest supplier of now of oil and gas in the world, and this has to be taken into account. This is also the largest emitter of greenhouse gases, and this is and really short-term oil expansion risks locking up into long-term climate failure. It sends exactly the wrong market signals, and you can't drill your way to peace or stability. Only a clean, distributed, and democratic energy system can deliver that in Ukraine, Europe, or beyond.
Well, many of questions I would like to raise. We just are quite limited with our schedule tonight. Thank you so very much, Pani Romanko, for your experience and for your time. And I hope to talk to you sometime soon when you can.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have this conversation.
The pleasure is always ours. Thank you. Well, that was it. It was UATV and me, Henry Keane, talking to Svitlana Romanko at Razom We Stand group. Thank you so very much and stay tuned for more. Goodbye.